The flickering fluorescent light in the basement of the community center cast long, dancing shadows, a visual metaphor for the potential often overlooked and the struggles hidden from plain sight. This was Elijah's world, a sanctuary where the faint, earthy smell of damp concrete and the metallic tang of old electronics was the scent of quiet determination. Atlanta, with its contradictions of gleaming wealth and weathered neighborhoods, was his home and his teacher. He had grown up in a historically disadvantaged area, witnessing firsthand the stark disparities in educational opportunities, the underfunded public schools, and the lack of resources that turned abstract concepts of inequality into tangible, personal pain. His own dreams of higher education and entrepreneurship were met with subtle discouragement, a quiet barrier he was forced to navigate from a young age. The antagonist of his story was not a person, but a diffuse and powerful force, the system itself. The seed of his discontent, the moment that solidified his purpose, came from a deeply personal place. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the air was thick with the humid Atlanta heat, but the basement was cool. Elijah watched his younger cousin, Maya, a girl with a spirit as vibrant as the street murals he passed every day, struggling with her online lessons. Her small shoulders were hunched, a physical manifestation of the weight she carried. Her fingers fumbled with a glitching interface on a second-hand tablet. Her frustration was not a sudden burst of anger, but a slow, quiet surrender, a palpable presence that filled the small, cluttered room. She whispered a complaint to herself, a heartbreaking lament about feeling invisible in her virtual classroom. The sound of that single word, invisible, was a physical blow to Elijah's heart. It resonated with the pain of 1,000 forgotten moments from his own past. It was the pain of a scholarship application denied, of a teacher who never saw his full potential, of a friend who became a victim of the school-to-prison pipeline. In that instant, Maya's struggle became a reflection of his own, and a reflection of the struggles of a community whose potential was constantly being overlooked. His personal pain gave rise to a powerful idea. He would create a space where students like Maya would always feel seen, heard, and understood. The origin of his platform was not a random thought. It was a direct response to the systemic educational inequities that he and his community had experienced their entire lives. The motivations that propelled Elijah forward were not generic desires for success or wealth. They were rooted in a deep-seated frustration with injustice, the heavy burden of seeing wasted potential, and the quiet exhaustion of navigating systems not built for him. His deepest wish was to create tangible change for his community, to build a bridge where he had only found walls. He sought validation not for himself, but for the collective potential of Black youth. He carried the unfulfilled dreams of his ancestors and the silent hopes of the children he saw every day. The storytelling, delivered through an omniscient third-person narrator, allowed a profound understanding of these internal landscapes, bridging the gap between Elijah's personal journey and the broader historical context of his struggle. He was at once an individual hero and a vessel for the generational struggle against systemic barriers. Elijah embarked on the arduous process of developing his online platform, which he named Ascend Academy. His workspace, the basement, was a microcosm of his ambition. The rhythmic click-clack of his keyboard was the backdrop to his tireless coding, the cool blue light of the screen illuminating a face set in determination. He was not merely building a website, he was crafting a digital sanctuary where representation mattered, where students could see themselves reflected in the tools and content, a solution to the gaps in STEM education and the need for culturally responsive teaching. The process was a crucible, burning away doubt and refining his resolve. The solitude of the work was a heavy weight, but it was not a burden he would carry alone. Elijah found unexpected allies who saw the flicker of his fire. First was Mrs. Lena, a retired teacher from the community center. Her wise, knowing eyes and the comforting aroma of her herbal tea provided a constant source of encouragement. She was a living bridge to the past, a symbol of the enduring spirit of Black educators who persevered despite systemic efforts to silence them. Mrs. Lena connected him to a small group of volunteer tutors, a network of support that embodied the community-building aspect of real EdTech companies. Her presence taught Elijah that technical skill alone was not enough. True change required a foundation of community and shared purpose. His second key ally was Marcus, a former college classmate. Marcus's sharp insights and quick, confident gestures helped refine the platform's technical architecture, turning a solitary pursuit into a shared mission. Their collaborative energy, a vibrant hum of shared purpose, stood in contrast to the isolating challenges Elijah had often faced. He had Marcus to handle the intricate algorithms and the back-end architecture, a task that demanded a relentless focus on detail. Elijah's own passion and lived experience, meanwhile, guided the user interface and the narrative content, ensuring the platform's soul was never lost in the code. As Ascend Academy gained momentum, the system began to react. It was a pressure that felt like a tight knot in Elijah's stomach, a constant tension as he balanced the platform's growth with financial scarcity. He faced rejections from traditional venture capitalists, their polished but dismissive tones echoing the discrimination faced by Black founders. Their inability to comprehend the unique needs of his target audience was not a personal failure on his part, but a manifestation of a systemic blind spot. He navigated the complex bureaucracies to secure nonprofit status, each form a new labyrinth, each step forward exponentially more difficult than it should have been. The taste of these setbacks was bitter and metallic, a flavor of defeat he refused to accept. He learned that building a platform was not enough. He also had to learn how to fight for its existence within a world that was not built to support it. The journey from a basement idea to a functioning platform was fraught with peril. One tense night, a server failed, threatening to wipe out months of work. The silence in the basement was broken by the frantic tapping of keys as Elijah and Marcus raced against time, the distant wail of sirens a grim soundtrack to their struggle. The fear was a cold, slick texture on the back of Elijah's neck, the very real possibility of his dream collapsing, a terrifying presence in the room. This was a moment of true adventure, a digital battle fought with code and caffeine, a test of his mettle. The system wasn't just a force of bureaucratic friction, it was a competitor. A larger, established EdTech company attempted to replicate Ascend Academy's model, forcing Elijah to innovate faster and protect his intellectual property. This was a direct echo of the subtle sabotage faced by real-world Black innovators whose sales or opportunities inexplicably decline when their race is revealed. The conflict wasn't just about market share. It was about the psychological cost of knowing that his race could be a barrier, even when his work was innovative. It added a layer of suspense to the narrative, as Elijah had to navigate a world that seemed to be actively working against his success. In the quiet moments, when the coding had stalled or the rejections had piled up, Elijah's mind would drift. The scent of his grandmother's homemade spice cake, a flavor he could almost taste, would bring him back to her kitchen, a place of warmth and stories. Through these flashbacks, the omniscient narrator weaved in the parallel struggles of the past. His grandmother spoke of the bitterness of segregated, underfunded schools, the quiet defiance of Black teachers, and the enduring nature of their fight. The words she spoke were not just a memory, but a call to action. Elijah's journey was not an isolated event. It was a continuation of a generational battle. He was a vessel, his personal pain a channel for the collective struggle of a people determined to educate themselves despite the forces arrayed against them. The weight of this legacy, a heavy but inspiring burden, settled on his shoulders, a reminder that his fight was rooted in history and powered by the memory of those who came before him. The narrative's fluid style, with its variation in sentence length, mirrored the emotional peaks and valleys of his journey. Short, incisive sentences punctuated moments of tension and action, while longer, more contemplative passages were reserved for internal reflection and the weight of history. This emotional rhythm kept the reader engaged, allowing them to feel the story rather than just read it, deepening the empathy and connection to Elijah's character. The struggle was not just a plot point, it was a tangible, lived experience. The decisive moment arrived, not with the clang of battle, but with the sterile click of a polished conference room door. The air in the Prime Innovations office was cold and clean, a stark contrast to the lived-in warmth and chaos of Elijah's basement workspace. An offer of acquisition was on the table, a substantial one that promised to solve all his financial problems and give Ascend Academy the resources and scale he could only dream of. But the offer came with a hidden cost. The integration would mean a compromise on the platform's core mission and culturally responsive design, its very soul. Elijah was at a crossroads, a moment of profound internal conflict. The easy path, the financially secure path, beckoned. The taste of vindication, sweet and dizzying, was within his grasp. But he couldn't shake the memory of Maya's face, of her whispered complaint of feeling invisible. He remembered the quiet determination of Mrs. Lena, the relentless support of Marcus, and the unwavering faith of his community. He had not built this platform for a corporation. He had built it for them. The narrative, at this point, delved deeply into his emotional state, using physical descriptions to convey his turmoil without explicitly naming his emotions. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders with a familiar heaviness. The resolution to his dilemma came not from within himself, but from a deliberate act of seeking counsel from his community. He gathered his small team and the elders of the community center, the very people who had supported him from the beginning. He laid out the offer and the dilemma, and the room once again was a space of vibrant hum of shared purpose. Mrs. Lena, her eyes twinkling with a knowing warmth, reminded him that the true value of Ascend Academy was not its code or its revenue, but the sense of belonging and empowerment it created. She observed that he possessed an undeniable fire within him, a flame that no one should ever be allowed to extinguish. Marcus, his brow furrowed in concentration, offered a strategic perspective, urging Elijah to fight for specific clauses that would protect the platform's mission and intellectual property. Their words, rich with wisdom and unwavering support, were the fuel he needed. He realized his power was not in his individual genius, but in the collective strength of his people. Armed with this newfound conviction, Elijah returned to the negotiation table. He was no longer a young man seeking validation. He was a leader, a representative of a community that had entrusted him with their hopes and dreams. The climax of the story was not a fight, but a profound act of dialogue, of quiet strength and unwavering purpose. He spoke to the Prime Innovations executives not just about profit, but about the profound need for platforms that recognized the full humanity of students and provided pathways to opportunity. The tension in the room was a dense, unsaid presence, but Elijah's voice was firm. He knew what he was fighting for, and he knew he was not fighting alone. The acquisition was a success, but it was a victory on Elijah's terms. It was a moment of overwhelming relief, a sweet taste of triumph that was about more than just money. It was a profound vindication of his vision. He had successfully negotiated for the core mission of Ascend Academy, its culturally responsive design and focus on community and accessibility to remain central to its integration within Prime Innovations. His journey had transformed him. From a young man struggling in the shadows, he had emerged as a visionary leader, his shoulders now carrying the weight of his responsibility with a new, quiet confidence. His revenge was not an act of personal vengeance, but a powerful, strategic act of systemic disruption. He had not burned down the house, he had infiltrated it, turning its own resources against the system that had tried to limit his potential. His platform, now backed by significant resources, expanded its reach, providing quality education and mentorship to thousands of Black students who were once forgotten. This was the revenge of prosperity, a triumph that proved the true power of building and empowering rather than merely destroying. The sweet aroma of his success was not just financial, but the perfume of a community uplifted, a legacy built on the foundation of shared purpose. The narrative concluded with a final universal observation from the omniscient narrator, tying Elijah's individual journey to the broader themes of the story. Sometimes, the greatest revolutions begin not in grand halls of power, but in the silent corners of forgotten spaces, lit by a single determined heart. The story invited viewers to reflect on their own forgotten projects, those dreams or initiatives that systemic barriers or self-doubt may have left behind. It was a powerful reminder that perseverance, community support, and a clear vision could transform even the most daunting challenges into opportunities for great breakthroughs. Elijah's story was not just a tale of an entrepreneur's triumph, it was a beacon of hope and a call to action. It was a story of a hero who didn't fight a villain, but an idea. A story of a man who didn't seek power, but justice. By showing how a single idea, born from personal pain and rooted in a deep sense of community, could challenge and ultimately transform a broken system, the narrative delivered its core message with undeniable power: that the seeds of change often rest dormant within our own struggles and experiences. It was a story designed to empower a generation to believe in their own hidden ascent, to find their voice, and to realize that their purpose could be the engine of profound, lasting change.